Slap Tech.
Who says that workstation laptops can't also be used for playing games? Not me, that's for sure. That's why I've got this ThinkPad P14s here with the AMD 6850U CPU that packs the integrated Radeon 680M GPU. We're going to find out how well it PC games, then we're going to find out how well it retro games. Before we start, it's important to remember that playing games with integrated graphics demands VSync to be on. Otherwise, you're in for a jerky picture, even when above the refresh rate of the display. With that refresher out of the way, it's time to jump in. We'll start the PC games off soft with Dead Cells, a two-dimensional future classic. This side-scroller plays perfectly well with VSync on and with low temps to boot. I'd turn VSync off, but then it would play the exact same anyway because FreeSync is enabled in the Radeon software, and it really shouldn't be disabled, just like how VSync should also be left on when playing with Intel's Iris Xe integrated graphics. I'm more than confident that this can drive a 120Hz display anyway. Next up is Overcooked 2, a nice little casual game. If this can't play at 60 FPS, it's all over, but there's no dropped frames here whatsoever. It also plays smooth as butter with VSync enabled, and with plenty of overhead left, temps stay nice and low. So beware, there's no hardware limitations here to help you avoid this relationship litmus trial. Snake Pass is something I have to throw at every GPU. If I can do high details at native res, you don't need anything better. So in this case, I guess it wouldn't hurt to have something a little better. Medium is also not perfect, but it's very close. Unfortunately, very close with VSync on can be quite jarring for video files. Fortunately, going down to low isn't necessary. If kept in medium at 1000p resolution, it's close enough to 60 at all times to keep this configuration. Racing around in Forza Motorsport 7 is a treat. Taking to the track in 1080p on high details is ultra smooth, except for a little skip every once in a while. VRAM greatly helps with loading times here, so expect to wait when loading up a track for the first time. And if you think ultra details are in the cards, think again. While it's very playable, it's just so much better to play with just high details. Slaying demons in Diablo III is kind of disappointing. I think if it had better driver support, it could perform a lot better than this. Here at max details in 1200p, there's quite a bit of slowdown when the magic missiles hit the fan. It really doesn't improve until shadows and SSAO are disabled while the textures are set to low. If any of those three things are still on, yeah, you're gonna have problems. But with everything off, it's mostly smooth sailing until a whole bunch of enemies and their gibs are taking up the screen. At least there is a way to play it very smoothly, and honestly, when things start to get really thick, being in low details is the last thing I'm thinking about, as long as the frame rate stays up there. This beautiful warning is the first thing that pops up when Diablo IV is launched. Every damn time, can't get rid of it. The game launches and plays just fine though, but in low details at native res, the ThinkPad will always struggle to reach 50 FPS. In order to get a smooth gaming experience, the resolution is going to have to be cut to about 75%. Sure, it looks quite blurry, but at least it'll be moving at a perfect 60 FPS most of the time. It'll still have deep stutters every once in a while when loading new assets, but these are spaced out enough to make the rest of the game worth playing. Taking to the streets in Overwatch 2 seems like a nice smooth time at first, but when the battlefield gets its volunteers, the picture gets a little shaky. I can foresee this causing some problems when trying to twitch aim. It's best to keep the details at the low preset where no frames will be dropped, even with a full roster duking it out. As I covered in my review of this laptop, Valheim is a rather frustrating experience when using the Vulkan API. The inside of this house is simply too dark, and nighttime is simply unplayable, period. Even in the middle of the day, certain aspects still lack brightness, like the backside of this house. Plus, there's no fog outside. This isn't how Vulkan does graphics on other platforms. Iris Xe doesn't have this problem, but the Radeon 680M sure does. When using the default API, everything looks and runs fine in mostly low details. The grass and detail distance are the only sliders pushed up here, and while reaching 60 is a mountain too high to climb, it's still smooth enough to enjoy. Here's Doom Eternal. Such graphics, much wow. Just kidding, all it needed was a reboot. Medium details runs decently well here. If it makes any sense, playing with a mouse and keyboard is more enjoyable at these settings, but if playing with a controller, where the motion is, more methodical, try not to call it sluggish here, then low details will be necessary to bring it up to 60 at all times. I'm going to finish up PC gaming by showing off how well Witcher 3 Classic runs. And it's worth showing off because the texture settings can be left at medium without much of a detriment to performance, which is a huge help to the overall look of the game when everything else is at low. It can be left at medium if you can tolerate it, but that's not my idea of a good time. Lowering the max frame rate to 30 might sound like a good idea, but the execution of it lacks polish with this GPU and is a little too jerky in my opinion. Let's move on to retro games. Starting off with some good old 2D classics, SNES Knight X does its thing properly and without any fuss, while the battery is in best performance mode. Just like streaming video, leaving the battery settings in anything less than best performance will make the audio and video stutter every once in a while, thanks to AMD's chipset drivers that don't play nice with the TPM security features. If a little bit of imperfection can be tolerated, the P14s can stay alive for 5 hours while playing these games. If best performance mode is a must though, expect 3.5 hours of 2D gaming. Melon DS runs perfectly well in native res, while in OpenGL mode, which is necessary for high resolutions, AMD's Radeon GPUs fall a little short. This is also a problem with the mighty Asus Zephyrus G14. Thankfully, we live in a world where DSmu-ME also exists, and it sounds better too. Dolphin performs just swimmingly at native res. 2x resolution is right up and should be avoided. There's enough skipping around and buffering when loading new assets at native res anyway, there's no need to exacerbate things by adding more pixels into the fray. This has been Playing Games with the Lenovo ThinkPad P14s Gen 3 AMD. Overall, it's not a half-bad piece of kit to play PC and retro games with. Yeah, it comes with caveats because it doesn't use a dedicated GPU with dedicated VRAM, but honestly, it damn near matches the performance of the GTX 1050 Ti 4GB. Make no mistake, it's still behind the modern GTX 1650, the lowest of mainstream gaming GPUs, but it holds its own regardless, and actually lets you play everything in at least low details with a couple choice settings turned up. That's way more than I can say for Iris Xe. Next up is the review of a really crappy 11-inch ThinkPad laptop. It's going to be such a great time, you definitely don't want to miss it. Subscribe now so that you'll know when it's up. You can unsubscribe after you watch it because it'll be the last laptop review I post for a while. How do you like that? Who else tells you to subscribe only for a little while? Tell me! Who? Thanks for watching, and you guys, have a good night.